Esmond here for Winners and Winers, trying to make you a better. And let's talk national championship game. The Washington Huskies, who maybe weren't really expected to be there. Michigan Wolverines, who spent a lot of time at the top of the heap. Of course, they beat Alabama to get into this game and were favored to win. They did so. The Washington Huskies were a dog to Texas, and they won and more than covered the +4 that they were getting. So people were expecting that it might be Michigan, Texas, or I heard a lot of talk about Texas and Alabama. The Washington Huskies were not given a lot of respect. And you can put it up to the SEC East Coast bias, I guess. But I live here in the Pacific Northwest. I'm just 90 miles south of Seattle, and I can tell you, from having watched every single Huskies game this season, they are one hell of a football team. Penix, to me, if I was an NFL team, he's my pick. I think he's the best quarterback in the draft. I haven't seen a release as fast as his since maybe Dan Marino. And the kind of zip that he has on the ball, he can fire a laser 40 yards down the field, or he can give you great touch on a screen pass or a teardrop into the end of the end zone, into the corner. He is magic. And when he wants to use his legs, he can. So I have great belief in him. Kalen DeBoer is a great coach who, by the way, has won championships. Not at this level, but at the level he coached at for many years. He was a multi-time national champion. So he's not going to have any fear going into a national championship game. I just don't think he won't. And then on the other side, you have Michigan that has been trying to get over the hump to win a national championship. But I want to point something out that I think is a big deal. Michigan has the so-called #1 defense in the country because they only have led an average of 9.5 points per game all year. Let's look at who they played. Eastern Michigan. East Carolina, 3 points. UNLV, 7 points. Bowling Green, 6 points. Rutgers, 7 points. Nebraska, 7. Minnesota, 10. Indiana, 7. Michigan State, 0. Purdue, 13. None of those teams are anything but terrible. Now, Penn State only scored 15, but Michigan only scored 24. They didn't exactly blow them out. In the second half of that game, they turned to the running game almost completely, and they ran Penn State down, and that's how they won that game. Maryland put up 24 points the next week on Michigan. The week after that, Ohio State put up 24. Then they get Iowa, who's terrible, and they score 0. And then Alabama, who has not exactly been an offensive juggernaut, put up 20 and were leading 20-17 in that game, and Michigan had to come back to win. Michigan's schedule has been tissue soft. And if Alabama hadn't beat Georgia, Alabama wouldn't have even been in the championship. Now let's look at who Washington played. Boise State, not terrible. Tulsa, okay, pretty bad. Michigan State, terrible. California, not great, but good. Beat them 59-32. Beat Arizona, much better than people expected, 31-24. Beat Oregon, 36-33. Beat Arizona State in a really bad game that they had. The wheels completely came off. Turned the ball over multiple times. They still prevailed 15-7. They beat Stanford 42-33. They beat USC 52-42. They beat Utah 35-28. They beat Oregon State in a freaking monsoon at Oregon State 22-20. Beat Washington State the next week 24-21. Beat Oregon again in the Pac-12 championship 34-31. And then just took down the third-ranked team in the country, Texas, in a hostile environment away from home, 37-31. Who's had a tougher schedule here? Well, it's obvious. The Washington Huskies have played a much tougher schedule than the Michigan Wolverines. And I don't think the Wolverines defense is as good as advertised because they played a lot of crappy teams with bad offenses. So I'm not going to do a team pick in this game, but here's what I am going to give you. This is going over the number. Michigan's defense is being overrated and their offense is being underrated. Washington Huskies defense, not terrible either. So what I'm saying here is on a perfect track indoors. Both these offenses are going to get theirs, and this is going to go over. I'm Loud Esmond for Winners and Whiners, trying to make you a better.